full house. It's exciting.
Very.
Yeah? You guys ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ready.
It's good to be first. All right. I think we had some video clips that we're supposed to play before we came out, hence our little hesitation. So I'm going to ask the booth. Nope, we're skipping videos. Perfect. Okay. You all are going to have to just ask these fine people to see the videos later. But before we really dive into more about your stories, well, actually, this will get us there. I'm going to start with something that I always start with my team. And I don't think anyone in this room works for me, which is good, because they would all roll their eyes. But anytime anyone on my team has ever come into my office with an idea, I always make them succinctly give me purpose and audience. You want to do anything? You got to tell me why you're doing it and for whom, right? So I would love for each one of you to talk about your video that we're here to talk about, your story, purpose and audience. Why'd you make it and who was it for? Libby, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I love the why question, actually. That's even just why I'm writing stories in general, and why this story that was about Patagonia and tourism there. It's because, one, I really want to share my experience with others and share a sense of place. That's connecting people with other people, and connecting people with place is a really big mission of mine and a value of mine. And so this platform with Planet Forward is a perfect way to do that. I've been really grateful to be able to write stories. And my audience, I would say, is people who are interested in the environment and want to learn more, but I also would love to have an audience of people who want to, who maybe don't know if they're interested or not, and they just want to read these stories, and I can bring in this message. So those are some of my reasons.
Okay, so you want to celebrate the place.
Yes.
Right? Connect people to it. Yeah, there we are. Connect people to it, and your audience is environmentally minded, curious, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Owen.
All right. So my story was to highlight water conservation through the car manufacturing process. We had an opportunity to go and visit Ford on an exploratory journey. And the purpose of the reasoning that I did that was I think water conservation is incredibly important, and it's one of the least talked about issues when it comes to car manufacturing. Audience, I think, obviously Planet Forward, but through that, I think people who care about the conservation of water and the issue of how we maintain sustainability through water usage mostly is the audience that would be captured by this video and taken by that information.
Perfect. And Farron, how about yours?
I want to answer that second one first. For audience, my audience is very simple and clear to me. Hafa everyone, I'm from Guam, and my audience is Tautau, the people of the land, the people of Guam, and people with ties to Guam, and in particular, the kind of people who wouldn't be in this room. So there's a lot of us kind of, forgive the expression, preaching to the choir. I'm trying to bring more people into the room, so the people who would not ordinarily hear the types of messages we have to share. And so my purpose, my why, very Simon Sinek, by the way, to start with why, is being born and raised on Guam and being a member of the indigenous population, being Chamorro. I have this lifelong infatuation with my island, and I just can't get enough of it. And I see there's, like everywhere else, there's a lot of issues, invasive species, climate change, human-caused degradation, and so on. And it's just not on our radars because we're not taught it in school, or we're not paying attention in school. And so I want to make those things, shine a light on those things, the good and the bad, and try to get people's baselines up so we can be better stewards of our land.
Perfect. You all passed the test. Purpose and audience. Great. Now, I have a couple degrees in geography, so place really matters to me. I fundamentally believe that all stories have to have a good sense of place and rooted in them, fictional, real, otherwise. I love that, particularly you, Libby, started with like, I want people to fall in love with this place, right? I think when we think about storytelling, people often assume that character has to be a person, right? Maybe an animal, but it can be a place too. I'd love to hear from each of you about how you wove place into your story. How did you give a sense of place? And talk a little bit about character development, whether it was a person or was the place your character?
I think that for this story in particular, you know, maybe there were various characters because I did include two people who were giving me lots of good information. And I really find, normally when I am writing, I'll end up writing and using kind of descriptive words, and sometimes it just kind of feels right. I'm like, yes, that really encompasses what I felt this place was. But also that can be subjective. So using photos is, I think, another great way. But this time I played around with also video clips. I tried to do audio clips as well, but it was so windy, you couldn't hear anything, which is probably for the best because I was trekking and I was breathing really hard and, you know, so for the best. But I think those video clips actually were fantastic, creating a sense of what the environment was like at the end of this, you know, really kind of famous hike, it's the longest one I'd been on also. It was, you know, windy, there were lots of people, and then at the end, there was a forest, and it was just beautiful. There was the wind blowing through the trees, the sun was filtering down. It was this sense of calm and peace. And sometimes I forget, you know, to film those moments or to take pictures of those moments, but I remembered, as you know, is my responsibility as being the storyteller. And that was one of my favorite parts of this piece as well. So I think that had ended up being a really good way. And the other thing I'll say too is when representing other people, I found that, you know, sharing a photo of them that they're comfortable with and in a background that they feel like is representative of them as well has been a really nice way. My favorite picture from that whole piece was of Tomas Rodriguez, and it's just him standing there with the mountains in the background.
So even the characters, you're really weaving into that geography in that place.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So Farron, I want to go to you with the same question, but when you gave us your little introduction, I got a sense that you wanted to show a sense of place or the geography that most people don't think of, don't see. Is that correct? And
I cover the full spectrum,
Yep.
So I try to use myself as a conduit, as a character to connect people with the places that I go to. I'm a big free diver, so most people can't hold their breath and dive to these sunken ships like 100 feet deep, for example. And so I'll try to have my face, which has become a familiar face in my community. I'm going to use a little dirty word, influencer. And so I've kind of become a local influencer, sorry. And I'll try to use my own self as a connection to these places. So I'll have a kind of a bunch of selfie shots. And then as much as possible, for example, when we're doing cleanups, we started a group called the Guam Extreme Cleanup Crew, and we're all divers, climbers, hikers, or drone pilots, and we'll rappel down cliffs and pick up trash on the cliff face or at the bottom, and then climb them back up or fly back up with the heavy lift drone sometimes. And so these are recognizable areas, either from being in that particular place or another part of the island where it's visible. And as much as possible, I try to show people's faces in the shot to show like, hey, I know that person. Let me ask him or her about it and their experience being there. Because I've been there before, but I never noticed this part of it. Or, yeah, there has always been so much trash, but it's looking better now. And so I try to not just show the places in isolation, let's say. I try to show that we are part of that nature, and that nature is a part of us. And so I try to show that those things working together, people and place together.
interesting. And Owen, your place in your story, your setting is much more urban,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
These two are talking about natural beauty and shipwrecks and mountains. how did you make, or did you make, your setting a compelling place?
So I surely tried. Overall, I mean, when you think about it, there's so many different car companies, so many different people to focus on. It's all over our world. We all use one. Well, most of us use one. But I tried to really hone in and focus on the plant in Dearborn and what they're doing specifically. I did have a chance to talk to one of the head engineers and got a lot of really good information out of him on the sustainability practices and that sort of stuff. So I tried to it was more multi-leveled. I tried to take it from the larger big picture and work it down to a smaller level where I was able to talk to one person about Ford as a company. And yeah, it was an interesting way of trying to spin the compelling character to the narrative. But I think I was able to do it pretty well, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important too for everyone to know who's thinking about stories, is that place doesn't have to be Patagonia, though that's great if it is, right? It can be somewhere inside, right? And so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm hearing that we can show the videos, show the clips, and I'd love to do that because I want to then transition into a little bit more about the process. You've given us the why and the where and for who, but let's take a look, and then I want to talk about how you edited. How did you get it short? Okay? So can we cue? Anyone?
When public health equals planet health. This is my friends and I freediving to collect and dispose of marine debris. This is a bunch of us scuba diving to clean the seafloor of part of a sailboat. This is us clearing a popular hiking trail from fallen trees after a super typhoon. This is us using a dolly to hike illegally dumped refrigerators out of the jungle. This is us rappelling down a sinkhole to get trash up and away. And this is us rock climbing down a cliff to pick up garbage, sometimes with the help of a big drone. Let's go away. Goodbye!
Thank you, Farron. So I'll stay with you and then we'll go to the other videos. I like what you said about, almost sheepishly, I'm an influencer, people know who I am. I know that doesn't play well in the journalism with a capital J crowd, but I think it plays well in the storytelling crowd, right? It is how people are consuming media. It is how stories are relatable.
It's an unfortunate reality.
Or it is what it is, quite frankly. And I think you make, why fight the system, use it, right? But from an editing perspective, how do you choose how much of you is in there versus other people versus the place versus the process? How do you keep that balance right?
It's a very organic flow. I've been making videos for a number of years, and so I kind of just have a feel for what to shoot, when to turn the camera on. Sometimes I will prep and have an idea of some shots I want to get if it's my first time coming to a thing or doing a certain thing. And then in the editing process, I want to try to show as many faces as possible that aren't mine, but of course also show mine, just so if people are scrolling and they see my face, my audience sees my face, they know like, oh, this is one of his videos. I want to see what's going on. I try to show new perspectives basically to everything and everywhere I go, everything I do and everywhere I go. So for example, many people have been to most of those spots, but we kind of accept them as they are. For example, that first shot with getting the tire out from underwater. People are born and raised, that's under a little pier off of the southernmost village, and people like learn to swim there. And so they've seen these things growing up, and they kind of just accept it as normal. And I try to challenge people's understanding of what is and isn't normal and why it's normal or not. And so it's like, hey, there's a lot of trash. We are capable. Let's do something about it. And so I always try to acknowledge people's current perspectives of a thing, and then try to introduce my perspective on it as a conservationist.
Very cool. Can we have the clip for Owen, please?
water filtration is honestly the best way to go forward. With the new facilities they're building, older infrastructure at where we make a lot of our vehicles, maintaining that equipment and being vigilant about it on a regular basis, which has been successful, hence the 72% water reduction over 20 years.
Very good. Owen, how much did you expect your audience to know about car manufacturing going into this?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. How much did you know?
Not a lot. A lot of really good information came out of this trip, and now I'm very fascinated with the process of building EVs and cars in general. So,
I think that's an interesting editing challenge in your case, right? Is how do you, I would say, shoot the middle in terms of people who know nothing about car manufacturing and those who may know a lot, and how do you include basic information enough basic information so that the advances really seem like advances, right?
Yeah.
Did you think about that? How did you balance that?
yeah, so going into it, my thought process was collect as much information as I possibly could and then whittle it down into that balance. So I went in, there were certain, it's not fully released yet, but it will be being released next week. Once it's released, there was a stat that I was able to find where it's something like 69,000 gallons or 39,000 gallons of water go into car manufacturing process. Sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Per vehicle.
But per vehicle. So just being able to collect stats like that and then take it and find ways to weave into your video process of what you think the most important information is and how it can affect audiences is kind of just finding that balance.
Cool. And let's move to you, Libby. Can we have Libby's clip, please? Okay, so we're going to scroll through your pictures here, or are you showing video too?
It's some videos, some pictures, but you can still, we can
Perfect.
chat while they're in the background.
Yeah.
It's a little different from theirs.
A little different
I
from
wasn't
theirs.
quite to that level of
That's okay.
videography.
There's no shame in a still photograph. Some of us have made quite a brand off of that. But, I guess for you, Libby, you know, it's editing is editing, and editing is hard. You talked a little bit about this of when you chose to take still photos, when you were doing audio, when you did video clips. Can you talk about not necessarily a process in the field and those decision making, but then when you were building your story together, how did you decide, you know, what to use where, and how did you think that through?
Yeah, similar to Owen, I just was taking a lot of content here and there, not knowing where it would be put in. And one of the difficult parts was, at first I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do all of Patagonia. And that was way too big of a scope. So definitely narrowing that down based on also the information I was getting, which was a lot around this hike that I was going on. So that worked out really well. I also had this vision of doing, you know, a picture, the kind of like Instagram photo that everyone sees, and then you zoom out and you see what it actually looks like with all of the people there too. And just taking videos of the walk without anyone there on the way up, and then on the walk down where it was just a traffic jam of people having to stop and wait for everyone else to come up. And it's like this grueling end of the hike where there's just like, you're just sweating, you're trying to get up and you have to stop and like let everyone else walk around you. And I think, so capturing everything and then trying to figure out what to put in. I tried to put in as much as I could about the hike itself. And about that experience to try to give the audience kind of a sense for what that was like. But for the content kind of beforehand and the information beforehand too, it was tough to kind of pare down and get to the main key points I wanted to talk about. And then the photos, I really also chose the ones that had more of like a wow factor to them to grab the audience as well.
Smart, very well done. Okay, we just have a couple minutes, so I want to end with a question for all of you. Owen, you said your piece hasn't even been released yet. Your students, this is obviously a learning exercise, right? And part of an assignment. But once this gets out into the real wild world, or some of you have, what do you hope, if any, impact is made with these pieces? As succinctly as you can. What if you were here a year from now and you're like, remember Libby's thing? It did this. What would that be?
It allowed others to travel into places they either revisiting or places they haven't been, and it made them think about travel in more of an environmental sense and a cultural sense, and how to kind of reframe even your own personal travel.
Owen?
I would say that I hope that it just gets people interested and involved. Obviously, it's not something that's really often talked about, and like just making, like hopefully someone sees it, gets interested, and then even from that, leading to activism to make sure that sustainability continues forward in a really important sector of life. So,
Farron?
For me, in our fields, we talk a lot about conservation and science communication, and I'm hoping to start to transcend that into inspiration. I want people, my community, to feel like they have to recognize the powers that they do have and use it for the good of our island and our planet.
Those are great aspirations, and I'd love to check back with you all as these stories push forward into the world. And really, thank you all for sharing the behind the scenes of your stories, for sharing your stories. It's hard. It's hard to let people in. It's hard to put your work out into the world, and so thank you for that. And I see huge, big futures for each one of you. So thank you all.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I'm going to Guam if anyone wants to come. I love scuba diving, so that'll be fun.